Welcome to Mr. Haunt's dungeon, where the darkness comes alive. Dive into spine-chilling tales and eerie encounters that will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you love the thrill of a good scare, hit that subscribe button and join us for new frightening and true stories. Don't miss out. Fear awaits. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get to the story. It was one of those evenings where the sky seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation as the sun dipped below the horizon. I set out for our nightly walk with my loyal companion, Rocky, a spirited border collie who never failed to bring joy to my heart. The streets were bathed in the soft glow of twilight, and the gentle rustle of leaves added to the peaceful ambience. As Rocky and I made our way along our usual route, a sense of unease crept over me, like a chill wind whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. At first, I brushed it off as nothing more than paranoia, but as we turned onto the next street, the feeling intensified, sending a shiver down my spine. Glancing over my shoulder, I caught sight of a figure trailing us from a distance. Their form was obscured by the dim light, but I could make out the distinct outline of a hoodie pulled tight over their head. Fear prickled at the edges of my consciousness as I quickened my pace, the rhythmic click of Rocky's nails against the pavement echoing my racing heart. No matter how fast I walked or how many turns I made, the hooded figure remained a constant presence, lurking just beyond the reach of my peripheral vision. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized that we were being followed, the sense of impending danger hanging heavy in the air. Finally, we reached the safety of my doorstep, and I hurried inside, my heart hammering in my chest as I locked the door behind me. But even as I collapsed onto the couch, the memory of the hooded stalker lingered like a stain on my consciousness, refusing to be erased. In the days that followed, I tried to put the encounter out of my mind, convincing myself that it was nothing more than a passing moment of paranoia. But the feeling of being watched never truly left me, lingering in the shadows like a ghost haunting the edges of my reality. Then, one afternoon, a package arrived on my doorstep, a nondescript cardboard box with no return address. Curiosity mingled with trepidation as I tore open the package, revealing a stack of photographs nestled inside. My blood ran cold as I flipped through the images, each one a snapshot of my own life, me walking Rocky through the park, me buying groceries at the local store, me going about my daily routine with the obliviousness of a lamb being led to the slaughter. But what chilled me to the bone were the notes that accompanied each photograph, taunting messages scrawled in jagged handwriting that sent shivers down my spine. "I see you," they read. "I know your every move." Terrified, I reached out to the police, desperate for help in identifying and apprehending my stalker. But despite their best efforts, they were unable to trace the mysterious sender or track down the hooded figure who continued to haunt my every waking moment. Weeks passed, and yet the shadow of the hooded stranger continued to loom over me like a specter from a nightmare. I tried to carry on with my life, to push aside the paralyzing fear that threatened to suffocate me, but the sense of impending doom never waned. Then, one fateful night, as I lay awake in bed, my nerves frayed to the breaking point, I heard it, a soft, insistent knocking on my door, like the whisper of a ghost haunting the halls of my own home. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept downstairs, dread coiling in the pit of my stomach like a serpent waiting to strike. With trembling hands, I reached for the handle, my fingers closing around it with a sense of resignation that bordered on despair. Swinging the door open, I braced myself for the horrors that awaited on the other side. And there, standing on my doorstep, was the hooded figure, their face obscured by darkness as they stared at me with cold, unblinking eyes. A chill ran down my spine as I realized that the nightmare was far from over. It was only just beginning. With a heavy heart, I closed the door, knowing that the true terror was not the specter that haunted my dreams, but the very real threat that lurked just beyond my doorstep. As I stood face to face with the hooded stranger on my doorstep, a wave of terror washed over me, threatening to consume me whole. His presence felt suffocating, his eyes gleaming with a sinister intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could react, the stranger lunged forward, his movements swift and predatory. With a surge of adrenaline, I slammed the door shut, the sound reverberating through the silent house like a gunshot in the night. But the stranger was relentless, pounding on the door with a ferocity that made my heart race even faster. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was trapped, with nowhere to run and no one to help. Frantically, I raced through the house, searching for any means of escape, but the windows were sealed shut, and the back door was locked tight. Desperation clawed at my chest as I realized that I was at the mercy of the hooded stranger, with no hope of escape. And then, as if sensing my fear, the pounding suddenly stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. But just as quickly as it had stopped, the pounding resumed, louder and more insistent than before. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that the stranger was no longer content to wait for me to open the door. He was going to force his way in. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I raced for the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest as I reached the second floor. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with fingers that felt like lead. "Please," I begged into the receiver, my voice trembling with fear. "You have to help me. There's someone trying to break into my house." The operator's voice was calm and reassuring, but it did little to ease my mounting sense of dread. With each passing moment, the pounding grew louder, echoing through the house like the tolling of a funeral bell. And then, just as I feared that all hope was lost, the pounding stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. And then, without warning, the door burst open with a deafening crash, sending splinters of wood flying through the air. The hooded stranger stood in the doorway, his eyes wild with madness as he advanced toward me with slow, deliberate steps. With a cry of terror, I turned and fled, racing down the stairs with a speed born of desperation. But even as I reached the bottom, I knew that I was not safe, not yet. With a burst of adrenaline, I flung open the front door and raced out into the night, the cold air biting at my skin as I ran for dear life. Behind me, I could hear the stranger's footsteps echoing in the darkness, each one a chilling reminder of the danger that lurked just behind me. But I refused to look back, refused to let fear consume me. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed forward, my lungs burning with exertion as I ran for the safety of the neighbor's house. And then, just when I thought that I couldn't run any further, I stumbled through the door, collapsing onto the floor in a heap. With a cry of relief, I looked up to see the concerned faces of my neighbors gathered around me, their voices a soothing balm to my frazzled nerves. Later that night, as I lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by the reassuring presence of friends and family, I learned the truth about the hooded stranger who had terrorized my life. It turned out that he was a stalker with a long history of mental illness, a man consumed by his own delusions and obsessions. The police assured me that he was now behind bars, where he could no longer pose a threat to anyone else. And yet, despite their assurances, I knew that the memory of that harrowing night would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the edges of our reality.